place.
So at what point did Man of Action get formed?
Right. So, without the name Man of Action, Joe and Steve met. They were working in the Uncanny office. I had met Steve and Joe um, as the artist on different books. And Joe Casey was working on the Uncanny office too. We actually met Joe. Steve and I met Joe through he was working at a bookstore in Burbank, and he was big time comic book fan, and he knew James as well, James Robinson, and he kind of got his break through James. James helped him on cable. That was where he got his start. But all three of us were kind of working in the X department, and we would hang out. We were just hanging out, having coffee, especially if we were talking about, well, this is what's happening in our book, what's happening in your book. Oh, let's see if we can't
do a crossover,
or at least
mention it,
or at least not crossover. At certain things, like let's do our own kind of brainstorming here to how we can help our own books, but help each other's books too. So we were doing some of that. And then Marvel had gone through 2 bankruptcies, and it was always a very difficult time in the 90s. They were, it was just could be a very nervous place to be working at. The thing that I always, it's so funny, how fortunes would flip back and forth between those 2 companies. But I would always describe of the visual difference between going to the Marvel office or going to the DC offices is you'd go into the Marvel offices and people would be running down the halls frantically screaming, and things were either stapled to the wall or tacked to the wall, and papers were always fluttering everywhere, and it just always felt like there was a constant frenzy. You'd go over to DC and it was just like this soft, quiet music playing in these offices, and all the pictures were in frames. So
completely different.
From one tumult to a place that felt like it kind of had its stuff together. Just from a
aesthetic point of view.
Not even from an aesthetic, but more from a kind of like a steady paycheck kind of point of view. Because you never knew if you were going to have a job over at Marvel because of that tumult all the time, unless you were really one of the 3 or 4 artists that were always going to have work over there. You weren't sure. But we got on Joe got on Action Comics, and then the head of the Superman division was Eddie Berganza at the time, and he also brought in Steve to do Superman, and brought in Joe Casey to do Man of Steel, one of the other titles. I can't remember if it was just Superman was the title. Jeff Loeb had started it a while before that. And I was brought in on Action with Joe. We had Eddie and I had struck up a friendship, and we were working together on that stuff. Pascal Ferry was also part of the mix, and what I was kind of assigned to do is follow a story through all the different issues. If there was the Emperor Joker, or the Joker Reign, or any of these kind of crossover ideas that would happen, I would often follow the story from issue to, from whatever issue it was happening in the other things. So I kind of was a coverall artist. I would catch I would move from Superman to Action Comics to Adventures of Superman, following some of those stories. And so our friendship, the 4 of us, we were working on everything.